What's your best fire me, I f***ing dare you moment from work? I was 17 and working part-time at a fast food restaurant. Someone wrecked the men's restroom. Shat in the urinal. Rubbed tea all over the wall. The manager came out and told me to clean it. I refused. She threatened to fire me. To which I laughed in her face and told her you can clean it yourself or you can lose an employee and still clean it yourself. I don't need this job. Needless to say, I wasn't fired and I didn't clean that up. I still laugh thinking about it. I once called in sick to my part-time job at Club Monaco. My manager told me that if I couldn't find anyone to cover my shift, I was going to be fired. So I FaceTimed her from the ER and had the doctor explain to her that I needed an MRI cause they wanted to make sure I didn't have a brain tumor. When I was 17 I worked a summer holiday job at Pizza Hut. I had transferred to my hometown restaurant from my university town restaurant. I was there for 5 weeks and hadn't been paid yet. The dickhead boss claimed it was because I gave him the wrong employee number. I hadn't. Anyway, after 5 weeks of no pay I rang him on New Year's Eve, i.e. busiest night of the summer, and said I wasn't coming to work because I wasn't a volunteer and I wasn't going to work for free. He told me if I didn't go to work I may as well not come back as I would be fired. I didn't go to work and had a fun New Year's instead. Then a few days later I called the employment tribunal, I'm in New Zealand, and told them what had happened. They called my dickhead boss. He then called me, offered me my job back and was nice as pie for the rest of the summer. Husband was having his gallbladder taken out and was having complications before surgery. I needed to leave early from work for about 2 hours and my boss threw a fit stating I couldn't leave. I told her I had 300 hours of sick time I can use for myself and my husband and if she wanted to push I'd take all of it at once, leaving no one but her to do my job. She said she'd fire me if I tried. I just looked at her and said I have to go, I'll send you my DR's note. I wasn't fired. I was actually awarded that year for job performance. Edit. I didn't take all 300 hours. I just threatened to since I was protected by FMLA. I only took the day off. Worked for Radio Shack and always butted heads with the district manager. He wanted me to use these ridiculous sales techniques that might work in a big city but were really pushy. The year he became our DM I won a contest for best salesman in the whole company. Out of about 14,000 employees. And I did it without being pushy and forcing stuff on people. He still tried to get me to use these ridiculous techniques each month when he would visit. But after I won the contest I stopped sugarcoating it and would flat out tell him that's stupid. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm a speech therapist. I work in a skilled nursing facility. For the most part, they all suck. This is no exception. But the place I used to work, the boss was a scumbag. To the extent that the entire rehab staff signed a letter asking to get him fired. He was basically forced out. I eventually left. And came to my current job. I swung by the rehab gym and saw his ass sitting in my current boss's office. I kind of froze in shock. I thought he was interviewing for a job there. So I went to the boss at the time and told her flat out that if he got hired, I was walking out immediately. She got a stunned look on her face and quickly assured me that he wasn't working there. That was my first time drawing a line in the sand like that. Was working in a restaurant. Already knew I was sick but our managers were assholes and I knew if I called in they'd be extremely pissy. Showed up to work around 8 AM. By 9 AM I knew I wasn't gonna last the rest of the day. Manager still made me stay. Around 9:30 I was pre-bussing my tables and just the sight of half-eaten food pushed me over the edge. Managed to hold my vomit until I got to the dishwashing area but puked in a trash can immediately after putting my plates down. Coworker saw me and vouched for me when I went to tell my manager I was leaving for the doctor. He said, even with a doctor's note, if you leave work today you'll be fired. I said, you have human waste in a kitchen trash can and haven't even done anything about it. It's on camera. I'm leaving. Showed up for work a few days later and didn't hear anything about it. Ended up quitting a few weeks later for a job at a couple considerably higher scale restaurant. Put in my 2 weeks notice at wildly understaffed job. 6 days later got sick. I call around and see if anyone can take my shift. No one is available. Tried to call out that morning. TTY manager tries to persuade me to come in even though I am barfing everywhere. I non-committally agree to call in later in the day to see if I am feeling up to coming in anyway. Call back. Say I am still sick and will not be coming in. Manager blows up at me in front of customers. Being rude as FCK. Eventually asks what I expect to do about the shift needing to be covered. I say I have done everything I am required to and it sounds like a management problem to me. Hang up and turn my phone off. Eventually asks what I expect to do about the shift needing to be covered. This is my favorite mindset that's so common. What is an employee expected to do about a shift coverage? I imagine they'd expect their manager to do their f-king job actually managing for once. I was elbows deep in an AT&T Unix machine that should have been replaced a decade before. Parts strewn all over a desk. When the client came in to see what was taking me so long. Me. You've got 3 dead fans. One of the power supplies has failed. There's a bad CMOS battery and the video card is glitchy and refusing to allow the machine to post sometimes. Client. So how long is it going to take? 15 minutes? Me. Laughing. I can patch things up in a couple hours. But I'm going to have to come back in a few days with new parts. Client. If you can't fix it in the next half hour you're fired. I'll find someone that knows what they are doing. I stood up. Grabbed my tools. And started walking. Client. Where are you going? Me. I told her how long it would take. And that's longer than a half hour. So I guess I'm fired. My firing lasted about 3 more steps towards the door. Worked at a private medical college in Punjab, India. They wanted me to falsify patient admissions to get increased grants from Govt. I refused. They said that I would be fired. I was the only resident with specializing in orthopedics. I was let go. Then came surprise checking by Gov medical body. I was offered 3 times my monthly pay to attend for 1 day inspection. I asked for 5 times and they agreed. I ditched out at the last moment. They lost their recognition of depth of orthopedics with insufficient residents. No admission in ortho till next checking. My dog became very ill quite suddenly and he needed to be put down. I was at work and I asked to leave half an hour early so I could be there for him. I asked my manager and she got annoyed and said there was no way and that I should have told her earlier. I said I'm sorry I didn't realize my dog was going to die in the most sarcastic way possible, then walked away knowing she'd follow me. I then stood at my desk and typed my resignation up in front of her. She gave me the time off. No one was going to stop me from being there for my boy. I was working at a shoe store in a mall and I requested a week in August off for my wedding. My manager told me her boss wasn't happy about that and all I said was my wedding is more important than back to school sales. They didn't fire me. Per se. They just stopped scheduling me and eventually my access to the employee website went away. That's called constructive dismissal and is illegal in some circumstances. Well, not really work but still. I was an intern at a 3D printer company. The manager was a complete piece of shitty. On my first week he made a co-worker cry because she sent an order to the wrong client. She apologized to the customer and he didn't mind. She sent the right one afterwards, however the manager screamed and yelled at her for the entire week. It was a small company and I was sitting next to her at the time, but I didn't know how to react to the situation because if I was afraid he would fire me and then I wouldn't pass class. Well, the week after that I made a wrong sketch of an advertisement and he just completely lost his mind. He screamed and yelled at me. I stood up, called my school and said what happened. They called the manager and was threatened to take his intern license away. I was left alone with my schoolwork after that and he never screamed at any of us ever again. Passed the internship barely. And he hated my guts after the incident. Peace. Sorry if my English is not that great. Company was doing badly in the 2008 depression. They hired an expensive new vice president to lead our division who asked me barely 1 month in to sack any 2 people from my team of software engineers whoever I felt like because she said so, as layoffs were necessary to ensure long-term stability or some such. I steadfastly refused and dared her to fire me instead. And the issue really blew up at the time. Before they could fire any of us though, a new contract came along which needed more people to execute than we even had on our rolls. They didn't hire anyone new, but we had to slog our assets to deliver the project. The VP got fired a few months later as she was way too expensive and wasn't adding enough value. Aircraft technician here working on an air ambulance on a very small island in the middle of nowhere. We used to be too lame. Licensed aircraft maintenance engineer on this position cause we work 15 days 24 hours schedule, but a new company bought our old one and the other guy left for a position closer home, and after 6 months they haven't been able to fill the position and have to send a guy 15 days each month. Paying flights and hotel that costs $100-200 per day cause this is a very expensive and popular holiday place. I'm from this island and after lots of years out of home I'm happy to be back. They want to lower my salary 30% or get fired cause I get nearly twice what they used to pay. Told me to accept or they will put another guy on my position. Yeah, good luck finding 2 lame that want to live here when you haven't find one. I worked at Burger King as a teenager. One day, the assistant manager, who illegally brought her teenage daughter to work to help her out, asked me to clean the restrooms. It wasn't my normal job, but I didn't mind. I had a good attitude about it and prepared to go clean the bathrooms. I walked into the men's room and discovered that the reason she asked me to do it was because someone shit all over the bathroom. Smeared fecal matter on the walls, the sink, the floor, the outside of the toilet. The toilet was clogged and hand wet. Used toilet paper inside of it and all over the room. It was a complete disaster. I walked out of the bathroom, went back to the kitchen and told the assistant manager I'm not cleaning that. You can fire me but I'm not cleaning it. She sighed heavily and went and got a mop. Worked at a cancer non-profit. Hired a lady who knew about us because her kid had cancer. Boss wanted me to fire her because she had to come in late or leave early to take her kid to chemo. I refused. Boss said she'd fire me if I didn't. I told her she could go right ahead. Our CEO said no way. I've been at the company a long time. Therefore I know both day and night shift duties in and out. Are well liked by our clients and in charge of training the new recruits. Most work for us up to 6-12 months before growing tired on the workload or finding that they can't handle the job or just wanted cash enough to study up for something else. Anyway, they are heavily dependent on me. My closest boss threatened to fire me for being home one day and drinking beer when I was supposed to be at work. 2 weeks prior I had agreed to do overtime, but I wanted a new schedule so I would not miss it. I got a new schedule, but she had forgotten to fill in that day on it. She blamed me for it anyway and said it was grounds for terminating my contract. I dared her to do it and see how long we could stay in business. My 22nd birthday I was working at a bookstore in the King of Prussia Mall. My college girlfriend of 4 years had broken up with me earlier that night. It was around 7 to 8 PM of a busy weekend night when I noticed a pretty awful smell. I glanced over at my manager working the other register and could tell he smelled it too. But we continued to power through a line of antsy customers. Once we cleared the line, a woman came up to me red-faced and laughing in shock and embarrassment. She said she had walked into one of the aisles to find a girl about 8 years old taking a crap on the floor. I looked over at the manager who clearly had heard as well and said, "Dave, you can go ahead and fire me, but I'm not cleaning that up." Not me, but my dad. So he was delivering catering to an office one day and the receptionist obviously f***ed up. She was yelling at him in front of her bosses saying that he was too late, on time with proof, and that the order was wrong when it wasn't. She was making such a big issue of it and then said she was going to report him to his manager and get him fired. So my dad said see if I care and gave her the number. She called and my dad picked up because he is not the manager but the owner. Everyone in that room was laughing at her. Sorry for formatting on mobile. Used to work at a liquor store with two extremely unreliable people who loved drama. Both of them got into dick measuring contests with the manager and quit on the spot, leaving me and a skeleton crew to manage the rest of the crazy summer season. The rest of the crew spent a good portion of their shift sitting on pallets, doing coke in the bathroom and or drinking on the job. So I was the go-to employee suddenly. Comparatively to the two drama queens, I was a very well-behaved employee. But I would sometimes take my tips and pop over to the coffee shop next door while on the clock. One time I stepped back into the store right as the manager came into the other entrance. I just stood there and looked at her. She kind of shrugged helplessly and let me do it for the rest of the summer. Owner of the company was avoiding the meeting where I get my raise. I waited over 2 weeks. Finally told my supervisors I'm walking out the door if they don't fix this. They told me to go talk to him. I told them they were the supervisors and it was their job to do that, not mine. I'm in an understaffed position at a job that is very difficult to fill. If I left then the rest would have gone too. They knew that. I worked retail in college and was a really valuable employee because I worked in 3 departments including loss prevention, which was really hard to get good people. In one of my not LP shifts my dept had clean bathrooms and the closing duties rotation. I go in and clean the men's room and it's mostly fine. I go to clean the women's room and it looks like someone has literally thrown a shitty grenade in the handicap stall. There's a line about 3 feet up the wall where everything below the line is covered in a fine layer of shitty spray. I noped out of that. We had no special equipment, like not even gloves, and told the store manager he needed to hire someone. He went on a huge rant for 10 minutes and people gathered to watch him yell. At the end I told him I could get a job at any of the stores at this shopping center and I wasn't cleaning that up. Then I signed out and I left. I called in my manager the next day to check my schedule and everything was fine. Shitty bullet dodged I guess. I was working in the service industry and one of my customers ordered something that had since been reworked on the menu. I could tell he didn't like it but didn't want to complain. I told my manager exactly that and she got mad at me because he didn't actually complain. She yelled at me about how I couldn't know what he was thinking. So I asked her to just go talk to the guy and if I was wrong she could fire me. You'll never guess exactly what the guy said to her. She didn't look me in the eye for over a month. I brought a PowerPoint into my last job's performance review that basically ended with I know how much I'm worth. Either pay me more shitty or find some other asshole to do all of the work of 5 people. I intended for it to come off as a half joke because me and my boss were pals but he thought it made sense so he fought to get me a raise. I was asked whether I put my barista job first in my life before anything else, including relationships, family, education, during an argument with the cafe owner after asking for 1 hour off my 10 hours day, 55 weeks W only 1 30 minutes break, to go to a meeting. I responded with no, because OBV, and he yelled at me saying I don't deserve the job. I have no work ethic, despite going above and beyond to fix his mistakes and being the only reason half the customers stayed. I'm stupid for being religious, and that I signed a contract to devote my life, not kidding. He said that to this job. He finished by saying other people would love to have this job if you're not going to take it seriously. I didn't say it, but I should have right then said fire me. I f***ing dare you. Did it.